So Gary, how you doing?
Hi Jim, I am superb. How's yourself?
Superb, yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Getting thirsty at this point. So
yeah,
today you're gonna help me be the judge, or I guess you're gonna be the judge of my James Bond inspired Brut IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a Brut IPA before?
I can't say I have. No, I've definitely had Brut aftershave, but no.
It's the same thing.
Is it? I thought it was. Yeah. No, so yeah. I haven't.
Yeah, you wouldn't be alone in never having had a Brut IPA, to be honest. It's kind of one of those, the fad kind of came and went. But obviously what I was trying to do with this beer is to recreate the Vesper Martini. Is that?
Yes.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, still cuts me deep. The invention of the Vesper is, right in the feels for Bond fans.
What is what is the story behind the Vesper then? I didn't know there was a story.
I mean,
behind it.
if you haven't seen Casino Royale or read the book, I don't want to give it away. This is a question straight off the bat. Have you seen Casino Royale? That's definitely a no. Then that's definitely a no.
No, I've seen pieces of it, and we have a friend who was fond of one particular scene of it. So that got bandied around for a while.
Yeah, no, it's all in that. I won't give any spoilers, but yeah, no.
So is that the film that the drink is from? Because I've seen the drink listed before, but I've never seen the film.
Yeah, so. I mean, one of the funny things about the James Bond franchise is, in terms of chronology, it is all over the place. So Casino Royale was from 2006, and it was like the 21st Bond film, I think it was, and you know. It's actually when we see Bond get his 00 status, where he gets his first license to kill. So it predates all of the other films all the way back from 1962 before then. So it's really weird. Like, the timeline's all over the place.
In advance of this episode, because admittedly I've made this beer for Bond, but I'm as we just kind of uncovered there, I'm not the biggest Bond guy. And I didn't realise that you were such a fan of Bond yourself.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, Goldfinger in particular is one of, I'd say it's in the first maybe 3 or 4 films that I remember watching ever. And I remember when I first watched Goldfinger. In fact, the really weird thing is I first watched Goldfinger, sat down, watched it on TV, taped it, and I just used to watch it on a loop over and over again. And this is early 90s, about 93, 94. And the funny thing was, one of the next films I watched after that was the 3rd Indiana Jones film, Last Crusade, which has also got Sean Connery in. But this one was made in 89, and this is, when he's almost completely bald, big white beard and stuff. So seeing those films back to back, I was like, who is this guy who can go from like really young, cool, fit guy to some really old granddad?
Realise.
And yeah, it was really mad. But Goldfinger, I think Goldfinger to James Bond is probably what Hey Jude is to the Beatles. It's the one where all of it's the one that's, everything, every entity of Bond that you know about is in there. It's got the gadgets, it's got the locations, it's got the exotic food in there. A lot of the stuff is so iconic that you'll probably know it from other things like The Simpsons, Austin Powers, Johnny English, and it's just in, whether you've seen the film or not, it'll be in your pop culture consciousness. And
I was going to say, because you insisted I watched Goldfinger before we had this conversation. Before you even entertained a conversation about Bond, I had to watch Goldfinger. So I did today, and it was almost like a joke, in that it was almost like someone had made that film like yesterday, based on all the James Bond pop culture references. It was like it had everything. It was almost like. Obviously, there's Austin Powers in Goldmember, which is a direct parody of Goldfinger, but it was almost as if the only film that Mike Myers had seen in preparing Austin Powers was Goldfinger. It had everything.
It's really weird to hear you say that, because there's another James Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever, and I think that film is essentially just the first Austin Powers film, almost word for word.
Oh, really?
Stuff. But yeah, definitely those sort of early Connery films in particular. It's strange because I always point people as a starting point as to whether to get into Bond to Goldfinger, because it has got everything. It's not my favourite Bond film, but I think it's a really good starting point. It's in my top 5. It's probably my 5th favourite. That changes every couple of weeks, and I do have a fairly organised list of favourite Bond films and stuff.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it is a Word document on my laptop. But what I love about it is you've got the opening scene where, you know, the first shot is essentially, it's a duck going along a little river. Is it a duck? No, it's a fake one on top of a scuba diver's head. And he gets out, you know, and he fires the gun with the rope to climb over a wall. What I love about it is the 60s special effects. He fires the gun, and then about 5 seconds later, you clearly see a guy who's stood behind Sean Connery just throwing a rope over a wall.
Are you talking about Goldfinger here now?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Right, sorry, I thought you were talking about from Russia. Yeah, I absolutely 100% remember that. And if I can be critical here, I thought that an MI6 trained spy wouldn't just get out of a lake and throw his British military issue breathing apparatus in the lake that he just crawled out of. Yeah. I thought that was lazy on old Jimmy Bond's part there.
But it's so cool just from the off. You know, he does this mission, he goes in, lays the plastic explosives and everything, and then undoes the thing, and straight away you've got the crisp white tuxedo underneath. He fixes the red carnation. It's just so slick. And then, you know, when he goes into the bar, making eyes with the dancer who's in there, he's lighting his cigarette whilst he checks his watch. You know, that whole thing of, you see so many films today where you'll have seen it a million times, something's blowing up behind them and you'll see the character moving in slow motion beforehand, not even looking back, because that's how cool they are. That all started from this film, I think, with Connery lighting his cigarette in the bar. Everyone's jumping up, you know, what's just gone off here, and he's just, you know, not bothered. He is immensely cool in this film.
Something that I noticed, and maybe you can comment on this, obviously not a huge Bond guy, like admittedly, something that I noticed is there's not an awful lot of what would you call it, score, not an awful lot of music in the film. So as I was watching it, I texted you about the fight scene between James Bond and Random Task, and there's no, and it's very weird because there's no score to it. In a film nowadays, there'd be, like, I don't know, drums at least, and maybe a guitar in the background of a fight scene like that, and there'd be much more close-ups. Is that, like, typical of the era? Is that typical of Bond? Because I guess the only score that they had was the
yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think Bond has changed quite a lot over the years. If you watch the Daniel Craig stuff, it is a lot more modern, because I think it's been affected by other films that caught up with Bond and then went further than it, and then Bond was playing catch up. So when the Bourne films came out and stuff and went, I think the Bourne films were better than what Bond was having at that point. Like, I look to, like, you know, Bond in the 90s and early 2000s with Pierce Brosnan, and I like Pierce Brosnan, but I think his films, probably my least favourite of all of the Bond films, to be honest.
What? Goldeneye? Are you kidding me?
Goldeneye's really good, but the score to Goldeneye is atrocious. Like, if you listen to that now, like, even at the time, people would say,
I couldn't comment.
It's not the greatest. But Goldeneye aside, the other three that he did after that, they're you know, they've still got a place in my heart. I still enjoy them and things, but they, if you compare those to other films of that era, you know, stuff like Speed or the Bournes and things, they're a different league. Like, they are way ahead of them. So they were playing catch up.
I suppose you're right, yeah.
But it's the brutality of it. You know, you've got you think of Sean Connery as a piece of casting as well, working class actor. You know, the original choice of the studio was Cary Grant to play James Bond. And Cary Grant was in his late 50s at the time, and he was, you know, a big Hollywood star. And Cary Grant's great. He would have been a really good Bond if he was in his late 20s or something. But he was very gentlemanly and stuff. All of a sudden, you've got this rugged guy. He's got a massive hairy chest and everything. You know, he's a former Miss Universe, for God's sake. And there's just something. There's that ruggedness that you hadn't really seen on screen before and stuff. And it's quite true when you think of it. The whole thing they used to say with especially Connery's Bond was that men wanted to be him, women wanted to bed him was the phrase that used to go with it.
Well, a lot of women did want to bed him in Goldfinger. Yeah. I noticed that.
Yeah,
for sure.
They did. I mean, obviously, there's a few things in it which haven't aged particularly well. I mean, there's.
Okay, well, maybe we can get into that, but before we do, should we crack this this beer up that I'm calling the Not Shaken or Stirred Brut IPA? So I hope you haven't shaken it.
I haven't.
Or stirred it.
No, I'm very excited
because a hallmark of the Brut IPA is that it is going to be very carbonated. So please don't shake it before you open it. All right, let's crack them open. So we both now have a glass of Not Shaken or Stirred Brut IPA. So I'll run you through this. My viewers will already know all this thing. But what I was going for here was a very dry, very kind of very puckering beer that almost had like you say, that kind of gin character to it. So a little bit floral, a little bit spicy. But more than anything, I wanted to communicate that that lemonness that the Vesper Martini is apparently famous for. You know, a big slice of lemon in it, and also a slight orange flavour because of the vermouth that goes in it. So that's what I was hoping for. I'm basically at your mercy with this now. What do you think? Let's go in. Cheers.
Here's to us. Wowzers.
Wow. I don't want to blow my own here, but I think that is very close to what I was trying to achieve.
That is so nice and surprisingly refreshing as well, because you wouldn't think, you know, that an IPA particularly would be refreshing, but it really, really is.
Well, that's one of the things of this Brut IPA is it's very, very clean and so kind of, I'm not even going to say crisp because it's not that. It's so clean and slight on the palate that you can just keep drinking it. It's basically all carbonation, and if you look at my glass here on my camera down there, it's very well carbonated, and that's kind of part of the style. But anyone can make a Brut IPA. I was trying to make a Brut IPA that James Bond might like. Do you think that Bond would approve of this Martini-inspired IPA?
100%. You know, Bond, he's big, he's bold, he likes those sort of flavours that will hit you straight away. It's got the fruitiness, it's got a bit of tang in there, and it's exotic as well. So,
it's exotic, yes. I'll take that.
Yeah, he would love this. I can imagine him, you know, kicking back on a plane, going across the Atlantic, having a nice one of these. 100%.
Yeah. So with regard to the cocktailness of this, how do you think it fits there? Because for me, I'm sort of getting that, you know, like when you have a shot of gin or you have a drink of gin, there's that kind of like it's a different bitterness to beer normally has. It's sort of like an unchecked bitterness to like a gin and tonic or something, which I think this beer does have. What would you, like I said, I don't want to put words into your mouth, so please don't let me.
Well, no, like one of the things, I definitely know what you mean about that. However, if you have gin, this is just me, I don't know if it's the same for everyone. If you have gin just by itself, it's very much like you're in a workhouse in Victorian England, I think, after a hard day's graft. I love a gin and tonic though, and this is definitely like a gin and tonic is light and refreshing, and this is definitely closer to that than what it would be to be a Victorian workhouse. I've just done a 14-hour shift. So yeah, no, it's great.
Well, you did spend a lot of time in the Victorian workhouses, so if anyone knows,
yeah,
it's you. Right, okay then, so thanks for that, Gary. I think you've given me some valuable feedback on that there. Are you ready for the bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout?
You better believe it.
Nice label on the bottle there. No expenses spared with that label. So the idea for this beer, I'm calling this beer Old Number 007.
Oh, I like it.
Because I thought that Jack Daniel's was a bourbon, when in fact it's not.
Yeah.
But I did put bourbon in this beer. So the inspiration for this beer was because when you asked me to make a beer for James Bond, well, so let's rephrase that. When you told me that the only beer that James Bond drinks is Heineken, I knew I had to step in. And when we were kind of discussing this, I remembered kind of a trivia question from maybe 10 years ago, maybe even longer, 15 years ago perhaps, where it was, what is James Bond's favourite drink? And at that point, technically, his favourite drink was bourbon, because he orders bourbon the most throughout all the books. Mm-hmm. Here, I've gone for a bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout. I'm not sure whether Bond would like it, but it was me trying to be clever, and I really like Imperial Stouts. So let's... Does Bond actually drink any bourbon in any of the films?
There's a couple where, there's one again, going back to Casino Royale, there's a scene where a big old brutish fight takes place, and he's bloody, battered, bruised, and it's in the middle of a card game where he's basically staked in against a bunch of terrorists. If he doesn't return to play, then the terrorists win his pot of money. So he has to go back, having just had this fight to the death with some henchmen, and he goes into his hotel room and pours himself the biggest thing of bourbon you can imagine, and he just downs it all down, and then he stood in the mirror and he's dabbing himself with all the cuts and the blood and everything. And I remember at the time seeing that scene in the cinema being old Danny Craig's got it. Here he is.
Yeah. So, there he is. He's Bond.
Yeah. So
I guess that's probably and here's here's what James Bond is now.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really get that previously, right?
No, that's the thing. I mean, the funny thing was about Daniel Craig was when he was announced to be Bond, there was protests outside the studio. People were putting up banners, taking out adverts, flying planes over Pinewood Studios with banners at the back saying no to blonde Bond and all this sort of stuff.
It's safe to say that none of my friends were at those protests.
Yeah, Same here. I mean, I couldn't drive at the time. I remember him being announced and being James Bond, ugh. Daniel Craig, why is it him? But then honestly, you see the film and it's unbelievable. He's fantastic in it. Still not my favourite Bond, but he's great.
Okay, so I need to watch Casino Royale. We've established that. I need to see him drink some bourbon. In the meantime, let's crack open our bourbon Imperial Stout.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm poured in. Gary, are you all poured in?
I'm all poured in.
Right, yeah. There's not really a lot. Hey, we've kind of got the same glass.
Yeah. Jamie Oliver glasses from Sainsbury's.
Mine, I think, it was bought as a stout glass. You can't really argue with the aesthetics of this. It looks like a stout. What I will say is the head isn't great, but high alcohol content in a beer tends to wind the head down anyway. So it's a very strong beer. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Right. So you mentioned the smell. Let's have a look.
It's almost
it's very
chocolatey, I want to say. I don't know if that's right, but
do you think?
It's got
it's got an edge to it.
It's got a darkness to it, a dark, succulent. Do you know what I mean? It's got something that sounds like.
Oh, you mean it's a complex aroma. It's definitely there's definitely a lot of yeast character in this, and I wouldn't imagine anything else, and also I wouldn't want it without the yeast character, I don't think.
Yeah.
So the yeast character is kind of think kind of nail polishy, but not not super strong. That's the kind of if you were to put scents into boxes, that's kind of the box that you're looking at. That kind of aromatic smell. All right, let's get in there, shall we?
Here's to us. That is, you know the way sometimes they say hot chocolate's a hug in a mug? Well, this is the alcoholic equivalent, I think.
That just keeps going. I know I was a big fan of my other Bond beer, the Brut IPA that I did. But that's a very interesting beer, and with the stronger beers, this is probably upwards of 10% now, this beer. They tend to get quite interesting at that strength. You said that you were getting a chocolatey aroma. Does that carry through to the taste? What are you getting in as the taste?
Not so much in the taste of it. I don't think chocolatey is the right word now that I've actually said that, but it reminds me of more of like a winter drink, if that makes sense. Like there's
it's definitely a winter drink.
Yeah, there's bolder flavours in there and stuff, and I love the smell of it. Like it's really, really nice. Like I could imagine. I'll tell you when would be the perfect time to have this. If you've ever been to like a really nice country pub for like a Sunday roast, and then you just sat around like the little fireplace afterwards. Yeah. I could just imagine it there. There's obviously a whippet on the floor or something as well. It's obviously
yeah. It's very boozy. My cheeks are getting a little bit rosy here drinking this.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from this, and this isn't necessarily what I was going for, but like I said, the aroma is yeasty. There's a slight smoke to it. I did put a lot of roast barley in this, so you can get that kind of, it's almost an acrid kind of smoked smell, but it's very subdued. And when you taste it, there's almost like it's not sweet, but there's a sweetness to it. So I held back on the bitterness of this beer a little bit because I knew that when I was putting the bourbon in there, bourbon has a tendency to be a little bit bitter, a little bit smoky itself. So I did hold back on the bitterness. So it's not necessarily sweet, but if you were to look at the balance on like a scale, it's towards the sweet end. Would you agree?
Yeah, like it's got like a treacly texture to it, hasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
I love this. I think it's gorgeous. Like I'd be quite happy to down this in one. I'm not gonna lie.
What I like about this is that after you've swallowed it, that's when the bourbon's almost hiding out till right at the end.
Yeah.
And there's not a load of bourbon in this, to be honest, to be truthful. There's not a load of bourbon in it, but the bourbon's hiding out to the end, and that's when those vanilla beans that I put in it kind of hit you as well.
Mm. Can I ask what bourbon did you use, or are we not allowed to know?
Well, it is a brand named bourbon, Gary. So no, I used Jim Beam.
Oh, good one.
Jim Beam White. I'm not a bourbon guy myself. Like I say, I thought Jack Daniels was a bourbon, and literally as I was about to buy it, read a whiskey nerd forum that said it's not the case. So, old number 007 bourbon barrel aged stout may not quite make sense, but I think it is a bourbony stout.
Yeah,
I think I achieved something. I achieved what I was trying to do there, I think.
And it fits perfectly as well, because I think if I'm right in my mixology history lesson, bourbon goes back to Kentucky, doesn't it? Or a lot of bourbon comes from Kentucky as well, like Kentucky bourbon and things.
Bourbon County, Kentucky, apparently.
Yeah, well, he only went to Kentucky and Goldfinger, didn't he? So there we go.
No. Right, yeah. Wow. And then we come full circle back to Goldfinger.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about the blatant disregard for women in. It was probably just the first 5 minutes, to be honest, or the first 10 minutes in that film.
Yeah.
And all I kept thinking was, man, this doesn't age well, but it especially doesn't age well because it's Sean Connery, and he had that interview.
Yeah.
Do you remember the weird interview?
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's some things you've just got to accept. We're very much a product of the times. You know, people.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't take everything James Bond does seriously, because at the end of the day, there's that wonderful line, isn't there, where he says, drinking Dom Perignon 54 at the wrong temperature is almost like as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. It's like, come on, James. Everyone loves the Beatles.
I didn't quite. I didn't hear whether he said earmuffs or earphones. So I didn't know whether he was saying without earmuffs, as in you don't want to hear it, or earphones, as in you only want to hear it. So I didn't know what to make of that.
I always think it's he's not a fan of the Beatles, and I always think it's quite funny, like, that he chose the Beatles, because this is 64 when this came out. So, you know, they were quite lucky that the Beatles have been a mainstay. I always, like, imagine if it was some other band, it's like, oh, it's almost as bad as listening to Rory Storm in the Hurricane without any earmuffs or something like that.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, you'd probably get it, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right. So something. It's probably a discussion point rather than a question for you personally that you should answer correctly and give information on it. After that scene, he gets clocked on the head, and then he looks to his lady friend who they've just spent a night together.
Yeah.
And she's completely painted gold, and he says that she died of skin suffocation.
Yeah.
I've heard of this before. Is that a true thing that can happen, do you think?
Yeah, I've heard it was, because I remember being absolutely terrified every time I had like a school play and stuff in primary school because of Goldfinger. You know, I was always like, the teachers were putting on my makeup and stuff, were like, are you sure? Have you seen Goldfinger? Do you know what's going to happen if
Leave
you
a small block at the bottom of my back.
Yeah, if you cover my spine, then all hell is to pay for and stuff. So yeah, apparently it is a thing. There's a really bad one where the original guy who was cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, the original idea, idea was, rather than to put him in this like tin costume, was to just paint him, and they painted him in this like special paint, body paint, and he got like lead poisoning from it, and ended up having loads of health, like breathing difficulties for the rest of his life, and he was going back and forth from courts, like trying to sue the studio and everything. I mean, don't want to talk too much about Wizard of Oz, because that whole thing's just a death trap. If you remember the scene where they're running through the poppy fields and there's all snow falling down, that was just a bunch of stagehands, like on the rafters of the studio in Hollywood, just dropping asbestos onto the actors as snow.
No.
Yeah, it's
what?
It's arguably one of
and then
the
they all
biggest
lie
death
down
traps.
in it and fall asleep.
Yeah, yes,
Wow.
It's one of the biggest death traps in Hollywood, I think. But yeah, no, it's mad. So apparently, yes, you can. There's a great little reference to that as well in Quantum of Solace, Daniel Craig's second film, where one of the characters called Strawberry Fields, where she gets killed for betraying someone, and Bond finds her in the exact same pose on the bed, but she's been covered in oil, like drowned in oil. So it's a nice little reference back to that as well, which was cool. But one of the things I'm quite interested in is, because obviously it was a first time viewing of Goldfinger. First of all, the big question that I am desperate to know your thoughts on: did you know that Sean Connery is wearing a wig in this film?
Whoa, no, I didn't notice. Oh, wait. Is he wearing a wig because he's bald, or he just didn't have the right colour hair? Or why
he's bald. He's got hair at the sides, but everything on top is complete
You know what? At the end, after he's fought Random Task, he you can see through the wig. Actually, now that you've said that. Because I did think to myself, his hair isn't looking as sharp as it was earlier on.
Yeah, because I still can't see it. I don't know if it's because I saw these films as a kid and he's always, just the perfect specimen of man to me.
Yeah.
But I still can't see the wig when I see it. I can see it in later films that he's done. But I always think the wig tech they must have had working for the Bond films in the 60s is, impeccable. Like, it's brilliant.
Yes. Well, think about something you just mentioned there. I think it's really interesting how we mentioned earlier about how the music and and things have come on, you know, James Bond basically had to move with the time. So when Bourne came out, he had to be a little bit more Bourne and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Think about how the physique has changed over time. Like the James Bond, like Sean Connery, it would almost be considered like a dad bod today. But back then, he was like, you know, that was our man. Yeah. Whereas now, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that scene where Daniel Craig's doing pull-ups.
Oh, in Skyfall.
Skyfall, yes. Yeah. I mean, damn it, man.
It's really funny, yeah. So I think Connery looks like, you know, when you used to see like the strong men in the circus of like the 30s.
Yes, he does. Yeah. He's got a big old chest. Yeah. The waist tapers slightly, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, that's what I think. It goes up and down. Like there's different Bonds, like Roger Moore, who was just after Sean Connery. He just doesn't care, and it's really weird when you look at his last film was A View to a Kill in the 80s, and he's like 57 in that film, and you can tell 100% how old he is. There's scenes where there's a wonderful clip of Roger Moore on This Morning, not long before he died, and he was talking about his time as Bond and how much he loved it and everything. And they're saying, you know, obviously there's a lot of stunts to do, so we're going to show you a clip now. Phil and Holly say, we're going to show you this clip. Can you point out when it's you and when it's stuntman? And it's basically just Roger Moore looking at a TV screen going, stuntman, 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 stuntman. That's me, stuntman, stuntman, stuntman. It's brilliant.
This is kind of all new to me too, because I was always under the impression, for whatever reason, that Roger Moore was the original Bond.
Yeah, I mean, because he's done the most, I think, and...
Oh, is it? Is that what it is?
Yeah, and his Bonds are certainly, you know, the campy and the fun and ridiculous, and I think they're the ones, certainly, that I enjoyed the most growing up as a kid, because they were just like a thrill ride, do you know what I mean? And they were a real good way to just get onto this series and go from there, whereas the Connerys are much more adult in tone and everything and stuff. So I think...
I suppose he's more... he's the most English one out of them all as well, isn't he?
Yeah, well...
He's very,
he's the only... Before Daniel Craig, he was the only English Bond as well, which is another thing, so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good... So I don't want to keep you all night, but I want to know your thoughts as the expert on Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton is my favourite Bond.
Mine too. I don't know why. Yeah. For some reason, I think when I was a kid, probably on 6 or 7 occasions when I went to my nan's, what would it have been? The Living Daylights or something like that was on. Yeah. And that was the only Bond film I ever saw. And it was only that one, and it was Timothy Dalton.
Yeah.
So to me, Timothy Dalton is Bond.
Timothy Dalton's brilliant. He only made 2, and both of them are right up there with 2 of my favourites. Like, they are so good. There was a part of me wanting to advise you to watch Licence to Kill, which was his second film.
You mean Licence to Kick?
Yes, Licence to Kill. But it's amazing. It's so good, and he very much paved the way for Daniel Craig. I think, you know, Licence to Kill is the only Bond to be a 15. It was dark. It was edgy. It was really, really ahead of its time. Yeah, and because it was a 15, it didn't make the money that the other Bond films did. It still did well and made like a big profit, but because you couldn't take the kids to go and see it, it wasn't this, you know, family event and stuff. And really, you're coming off these Roger Moore films, which are very much tongue-in-cheek, almost like Carry On Bond in a way. That, you know, I think audiences saw it and thought, whoa, this is too dark, this is too dangerous, we don't like this. And that's why I think it went a bit lighter again with Pierce Brosnan. But we go right back to that with Daniel Craig stuff. So I think, you know, and Timothy Dalton is 100% the best actor to play Bond as well. Whether people think he's the best Bond or not, you know, he's a proper thesp, isn't he? So he's great.
I feel like, and like I say, I only saw the one film 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
But looking back at it now, I feel like, and this is a weird thing to say, really. I feel like Timothy Dalton's hair gets messed up more than the other Bond's hairs, which I think is indicative of kind of the strife that he's in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that.
No, 100%.
Not, but that's what I feel like.
Yeah.
So he comes the closest to kind of losing the battle, sort of thing.
Yeah, and what I loved about him is, he was quite method with it as well. Like, he was always reading the books before they'd start filming and things, and he was doing like a lot of the stunts himself and stuff like that, because he thought he had to, actually do them to become into the part. And that's what I really like about him as well. Whereas a lot of the other guys were sort of like, nah, you're right, get Stunty in to come and do it for us. That's fine. Yeah,
I've just taken another sip of this beer, and I think that I don't know about you, but now that it's warming up and the carbon dioxide is kind of leaving the beer, it's getting much more coffee-y, so it's kind of it's kind of leaving the bourbon behind a little bit. I'm not sure.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, but yeah, so I don't know why. It's a weird thing I have with Timothy Dalton. But it's funny to say that, because in Goldfinger, my other half kind of came in as I was watching it and said, "Is James Bond winning yet?" And I was like, "Well, he's not really been in any danger yet, to be honest." It was like Goldfinger almost wanted to be his mate for most of it, and then just right at the very end, just kind of shoved him in the bank vault to die, and then he had that, like I say, that weird musicless fight with Random Task. I know I keep saying Random Task because I saw Austin Powers. Austin Powers came out when I was 7.
Yeah.
And then I was probably 27 when I went, Odd Job, Random Task.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I kind of made that connection with that sort of take on the name.
Yeah.
I think as a spoof, that's the best. That is by far the best.
It's so good. We should have a game one day, Jim, where I show you different ways that Bond dispatches henchmen, and then you've got to guess what the line is that he says just after he's killed them as well.
Oh, that would be great.
Would be great. There's so many good ones. There's one in On Her Majesty's Secret Service where he's being chased on a down ski slope as he's trying to get off a lodge. And they're all chasing him, and he jumps over like a big wood chipper, and this one oaf sort of loses his footing and falls right into the wood chipper, and he sort of turns around to the Bond girl in the film, who's played by Diana Rigg, and goes, "He had a lot of guts." Like that. So he's like, guts are going everywhere.
Oh no.
There's a good one in Tomorrow Never Dies, Pierce Brosnan's second, where there's a fight inside a printing, like a big printing place where they print newspapers. Stuff, and he has a fight and he punches one guy into like the giant printing press, and then you just see all the paper coming out, but with all like blood stained and everything like that, and he just sort of half looks at the camera and raises an eyebrow and goes, "They'll print anything these days." And stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
There is a question I wanted to ask you though, and this is my biggest problem with the whole of Goldfinger. So
this is the biggest problem. Okay, well.
Yeah, this is the one that I always thought, even as a kid, I was like, no way, right? And but let's say that you've imprisoned me and you've set a guard to watch, and I want to escape. Would me coming up to the window and just doing this, would that be enough to make you want to go in?
What? This is funny because I thought I bought the fact that he was under covert surveillance. So, him putting his jacket on the door. Is this the thing you're talking about? Putting his jacket on the door? Is this a different point?
That's in the airplane, isn't it? Where he puts his jacket on the door.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. You're talking about in the actual prison.
When he's in the cell and he.
Yes, I know, and he jumps out on them afterwards. Yeah. No, Gary, it wouldn't.
No,
it definitely wouldn't.
The worst guard of all time.
Right. So one last thing I wanted to just comment on was, and this is more of just an old film thing rather than a Bond thing. So there's a point in it where, in Goldfinger this is, where he flips the pool table over.
Yeah.
And one of the goons goes, "Oh, that was a fake pool table," or something like that. But I thought it looked cool, the whole arc. I didn't realise why it had to change position in the room, but I guess it made it look cool, and it kind of changed position and flipped over. And then he twists some knobs and things like that. This is something that I got pointed out to me not recently, a while ago, and ever since then it's been at the forefront of my mind, and maybe you can comment on it, is in older films, they didn't know what computers were going to be in the future. So what they did back then, because they didn't know what computers were going to be, they just made more computer. So like Goldfinger, do you know what I mean? So Goldfinger's control panel nowadays was probably on his phone. He could probably just beep, 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 press it on his phone. But instead, what the director kind of had him do was have a whole pool table sized computer for his control panel. And it just, to me, it always makes me smile when I notice stuff like that.
I love stuff like that. It's almost as if like Professor Frink from The Simpsons has designed this evil layer, and there's just like panels of like ridiculous stuff that doesn't need to be there. Yeah, I love that. He could do that plan with what? His mobile phone and a quick PowerPoint, I think now, couldn't he? Or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I do want to ask you though, before we do leave, I mean, did you enjoy Goldfinger? What have you taken away from it?
I did. So it was a weird one, because it's very much, like I said, it seemed like a joke Bond. Yeah. I can see that it's the best, or not the best one. I can see that it's the quintessential Bond film. Yeah. In that it's got everything. What I liked is that it is when they take it from a simple heist into the radioactive components, without giving any spoilers, or I don't know, it's 50 years old now. You probably already know. Yes, and I like that. That was the part where I was like, okay, there's more to this, and this is actually well written, rather than just being another Bond film. This is actually very well written, and they've kind of planned this out. So with me saying Goldfinger just wanted to be Bond's mate for most of it, that also played a part in it, I think, because they had this MI6 agent. If they'd have killed him, then Goldfinger was already on their radar. He would have been bust. Yeah. If they'd have, if he didn't be his mate, then the British intelligence would have been in anyway. So he had to do that. This film had to be towing the line, Goldfinger, and I think that it was well done. Yeah. I particularly enjoyed though. There's a moment where I can only think of a lot of vagina. What's her real name?
Pussy Galore.
Pussy Galore, yeah. So when he first gets on the plane, Pussy Galore's the pilot, and she goes, "Oh, I'm Goldfinger's pilot," and he goes, he kind of makes like a wry comment, like, "Oh yeah, you know, what else do you fly?" sort of thing. And she goes, "I'm just a good pilot, okay?" Yeah. And then not 5 minutes later, Goldfinger basically goes, "Hey pussy, why don't you shag him?" Like that's it. "Why don't you shag him? It'll help us out here." And she goes, "Okay, cool, yeah."
That's one of the big problems that people have watching it today, because she says, doesn't she, "I'm immune to your charms" and all this, implying that she's lesbian and stuff. And the fact that when they have a literal roll in the hay later on, he goes to kiss her, and she's like forcing him away, but I don't want to say he forces himself upon it. He basically gives her a power kiss. I think it's the best way to put it. Yeah. And then
he needs to break the spell of gayness that she has, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So yeah, who knows? Who knows?
I don't believe in that kind of thing, by the way.
No, same.
No. It was good. So thank you for suggesting I watch that, and thank you for being so complimentary about the beers. I hope it was truthful also.
100%.
Cool. Right, so Gary, I guess I'll see you again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more film content. And if you would like to join us for a film location walking tour of Liverpool, you can do so by booking online at realtours.co.uk.